All right. Hi, everybody. So I'm Elizabeth Gruber. I'm an admissions counselor here at Mount St. Joseph. I work mostly with undergraduate students. Today, we are going to do a panel here with some of our physician assistant students and some professors as well. So I will start off, we'll let everyone introduce themselves. Professor Mather, we'll start with you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anu Mathur. I'm a physician assistant. I graduated from Baylor's physician assistant program in Houston, Texas, back in 2008. So I've been practicing for a while now in various specialties. I have had the pleasure of having worked in family medicine, internal medicine, urgent care, and sleep medicine over those years. And more recently have been involved with the Mounts Physician Assistant Program and have been principal faculty here for the last 3 years. And I'm also admissions chairperson.
Hi, my name's Kalia Black. I'm a second year PA student. So I have about 6 months until graduation. I went to Ryle High School in Northern Kentucky, and then I went to Center College for my undergrad.
Hello, I'm Kyler Dalton. I'm a second year physician assistant student. I went to Highlands High School in Fort Thomas and then Northern Kentucky University for my undergrad. And I also have 6 months left in the program.
Hi, my name is Vanessa Godinez. I am a first year PA student. I went to Madeira High School and I went to Mount St. Joseph University for my undergrad and majored in neuroscience.
Hi, my name is Bryce Youngquist. I went to high school in California, did my undergraduate at Lewis and Clark College in Portland, Oregon, and I am also a first year PA student.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate that. So we're going to go ahead and just get started with the questions and go through and kind of like we talked about, as y'all have an answer or response, just jump right in. First question's pretty straightforward, pretty easy. What is a physician assistant?
I guess I'll start. So a physician assistant is a licensed medical professional who is licensed to diagnose and treat and prescribe and take care of patients, and we're licensed through the medical board. And every state has their own licensing board. And so, as I mentioned before, I kind of went to school in Texas. So when I first graduated, I was practicing in Texas. And then when I moved to Ohio, I had to get licensed again here. So that's something unique about the PA profession, that you are board certified nationally, but then you have to get licensed per state. And that's how you can practice in that field.
Does anyone else have anything they want to add to that? Okay. All right. And then what is the difference between a physician assistant and someone like a nurse practitioner? Because that, to me, who has absolutely no experience in the medical field whatsoever, those sound pretty similar. And then also, what's the difference between a PA and a nurse, or a PA and what you think of like a typical like MD, DO?
So for PA versus NP, nurse practitioners, to the general public, I would say we seem pretty similar in our responsibilities, but one of the biggest differences is that nurse practitioners are educated and trained under the nursing model, whereas physician assistants are trained under the medical model, similar to physicians. Another big difference is, correct me if I'm wrong, Professor Mather, but for PA school, we have like a generalized education when it comes to medicine, where it's kind of a comprehensive view of all aspects. Whereas nurse practitioner students, they have to choose what's called like a population focus, and then their education is tailored around that. So they choose like pediatric NP or women's health NP, and their education is tailored around that, correct?
That's correct. And the other, some of the other points are, the path is a little bit different. When you go to a physician assistant school, it's a master's program. And so most often the students will after finishing high school, go and get an undergraduate degree, and then go and get a master's degree, versus a nurse practitioner may kind of follow the paths of getting their, become an RN and then become a nurse practitioner. So their path is slightly different than that of PAs. To kind of go off of that same topic, when it comes to a difference between a physician assistant and a medical doctor, an MD, or a DO, which is a doctor of osteopathy, it's the same kind of concept, similar path. You go to high school, then get your undergraduate degree, and then you would go to medical school, and then do residency, versus PA, you would finish undergraduate and then go to PA school. The main difference between a physician assistant and a medical doctor and MD is that we do not specialize, and that's a little bit different than an MD would go on. So several more years of schooling, because you have 4 years of medical school, and then you can do residency, which can go from 3 years to 7 to 10 years, depending upon what specialty you picked. PA school, you graduate, you do your undergraduate degree, which could be 4 years typically. And then PA school, depending upon where you go, can be between 2 to 3 years, depending upon the program. The Mounds program is 27 months, but typically it's about 2 to 3 years. And once you graduate, you start working. So that's the difference between the two. And you're not specialized to one particular field. As Kalia mentioned, NPs sometimes do pick a track. So it could be pediatric or family medicine, things along those lines, whereas PAs can go into any field.
Thank you. Would help if I unmuted myself, wouldn't it? So, and then the next question, physician assistants, do they have to be supervised when they're making their medical decisions, or they're kind of off on their own? And if they have to be supervised, what does that, like an overviewing doctor or anything like that, or how does that work?
So physician assistants do need to be supervised. We are not yet allowed to practice independently. However, supervision has a very broad definition, and it depends on the state. Like Professor Mather said, we're independently licensed in each state by their board of medicine. So in some states, it just means that you have to have a doctor just on paper somewhere who is making sure that what you are doing and that you are competent, so that if something goes wrong, they're like, hey, why didn't you catch it? Others, they have to be in the building. And some states, you have to have someone who's at least available by phone call. So those are really, even though you have to have supervisor, it doesn't mean that you're working under someone's thumb. And I think the best way to get out of that is to practice hard, do your best, and show that you can work independently. And a lot of the physician assistants that I know and have shadowed and worked alongside, you would never know that they had someone supervising them. They're making their decisions, they're making choices, they'll check in, but that does not mean that they are, going up to someone asking for permission for every step of the path. They're diagnosing, ordering, and doing everything their own, which is, I think, a really cool part. And it really enforces just the teamwork mentality that is really a foundational component of being a physician assistant.
I think you made some great points there, Bryce. I think the key aspect over there, it is a collaboration. We work together, but it's not, when you hear the word supervision, it's kind of a little bit of a misnomer. It feels like the person is standing right above you, watching you, what you're doing, and that's really not what it is. I've been practicing as a PA for well over 12 years. And when I first graduated, I probably needed more help and had more collaboration with my supervising physician because I was new at the job. And now 12 years out, I currently have a supervising physician, but I have never picked up the phone to call him, to ask a question. But I love the idea that if I felt the need, I did have someone to call and say, hey, can you give me some advice and help me out? And that's the benefit. And I think most of the time that supervision, depending upon the state, as Bryce stated, is very dependent, it's very dependent on which state you're living in and where you're licensed. But for the most part, you have a lot of autonomy, meaning you are able to function as a licensed medical professional and take care of your patients.
Thank you. And then, so a lot of people want to know, you're going to a lot of school, you have to go through essentially about 6-7 years of school. And it's expensive. So how much money do PAs typically make? Is all the school kind of worth what you're putting in up front? Money wise, not necessarily like, what I'm trying to say.
So let me start off there. So right now, the physician assistant profession is like the number 3, most coveted job in healthcare professions, according to U.S. World Report. And that partly is there's a need, and also because it is a good profession, you are able to maintain a very decent lifestyle. And depending upon the state, again, it can vary, but typically a new graduate from a physician assistant program, which is a master's program, can expect to make a 6-figure salary. So you can make $100,000 upon graduation. Aside a pandemic and economic recession, that is typically what you can expect. And so even 12 years ago, when I graduated, my first job out of PA school, I was making $75,000 a year. So that was at the start, and that was 12 years ago, and it's kept creeping up pretty drastically. And that was in Texas, so it is state dependent too. So there's a lot of ifs, ands, or buts, but you can definitely anticipate having a good steady job and a good salary that can help you pay off those loans and have a decent life for now and for the future.
Nice. I should be a PA. And then I know earlier we kind of talked a little bit when we had talked about, what do PAs do and how do they differ? And I know you all mentioned that PAs are much more generalized than a lot of other fields. Can PAs specialize, or if they don't specialize, what kind of fields do PAs generally work in? What kind of options do you have there?
I guess I'll start off again. So when it comes to specialties, yes, a PA can work in any subspecialty that they wanted. Now, typically, for example, when you're in a physician assistant program, you have several rotations, and you get to get a taste of the various fields, such as family medicine, internal medicine, emergency medicine, women's health, pediatrics, surgery. So you get a behavioral health. So these are some of the traditional broad kind of categories that you get a taste of during your schooling. And some will go into those bigger categories and start working in those subspecialties, or sometimes they will find the job even more unique. For example, I never had a sleep medicine rotation, but then I found a job in a really small specialty. And so that's the benefit of having that broad education, that you can work in any field. One of my classmates from PA school, as soon as we graduated, we had a pediatrics rotation, we had a surgery rotation, and she went and worked in pediatric hand surgery, which was very, very, small subcategory. So it really, you can go wherever you're needed and wherever you want it. And if you can find a job, then it's yours. That's the nice thing about being a PA. There's no limitations on that. And you can do any subspecialty that you're interested in.
And to add to Professor Mather's comments and answers to that question, I've also heard other PAs who practice about how you can get a certificate of added qualifications in certain different specialties or fields that you would want to work in. So for example, if you wanted to work in emergency medicine, there's a certificate that you can get after getting a couple years of experience. Passing a test, you can gain a certificate of added qualification saying that you are qualified or extra qualified to work in that specific specialty. So that's nice to have, especially if you are going to want to continue to work in that field and don't plan on leaving and adding to your education.
And there are also opportunities for fellowships. I don't know if you know what fellowships are, because I didn't when I was in high school, but those are basically extra opportunities to kind of play a practice role within that specialty. So you can practice in surgery, you can get more experience, and you are working independently, but you're also still in a kind of student mentorship role, more so than if you had just been hired fully. So there are opportunities, and there's increasing numbers of fellowships around the country in different specialties, different areas of interest. So if you had a specific interest, you could possibly find one of those to really hone in on it.
Anybody else have anything to add? I know I saw a couple people unmute themselves earlier, so I just want to make sure everyone says what they want to say. Is everyone good?
Kyler stole my thunder, yeah.
Okay. All right, so next question, and I would love it if all of you would answer this one. Why did y'all decide that you want to be a physician assistant? What What about the field appeals to you, and why did you decide you want to dedicate your life to it?
I can go first. So when I was in undergrad, I knew that I wanted to do the medical field route. So I was actually pre-med, and I spent most of my time studying and trying to work. So it wasn't until after I graduated that I really decided to get some patient care experience and see what, medical school or nursing, or kind of like explore the medical career myself. And working in the hospital, you really get to see the different roles that different providers play. So I got to see nurses and doctors and PAs. And I decided that PA was the model that fit me the best, because I like being involved in the decision-making process and really analyzing the cases. But I also did enjoy the aspect of having someone close to me to be able to keep learning from them. So I shadowed a few PAs through there, and that really set it in. When I was working in the hospital, the interactions with the patients is what made me realize that the healthcare field was for me. I loved every interaction that I had with them, and I still take memories from that. So I definitely know that this is the correct field for myself, and I'm so thankful that I was able to get that experience and really set in that I wanted to do this as a career.
So I would say my situation was very similar to Vanessa's. I entered undergrad with having interest in healthcare and decided I didn't know exactly which field, just like her, of which one I wanted to go into. So I actually shadowed a couple different professions. I shadowed my pediatrician, I shadowed a PA, I shadowed a nurse practitioner, spent some time with them, tried to get the feel for what I liked. And I ended up with choosing PA because of a couple of different factors. As Professor Mather mentioned earlier, the work-life balance of a PA it seems to be pretty great. You work in some cases you work a set amount of hours, and you have that time to spend with your family when you're off and such. Also, having the relationship with the supervising physician is great, in case, to always have somebody there if you ever have any questions or concerns about patients or want a second opinion and things like that. And then third, it's as you've probably done with your research, PA school is cheaper than medical school, and I didn't like the idea of going so many years and having so much debt just to start working to pay them off. So yes, I'll have debt from PA school, but it'll be a little bit easier to pay off.
So I echo all of the things that they said. I agree with all of that. But I think the biggest thing for me was the ability to switch specialties whenever you want. So my mom is a physician. She's an ER doctor, and she is already experiencing burnout after only 10 years or so of practice. She's 43. So I know that I'm probably going to want to, work in as many different fields as I can. So I think that was one of the biggest factors for me, is like, you're not stuck with whatever you were trained in, so I think that was the biggest factor for me.
I took a bit of a different route. I was a physics undergrad major. So I went in thinking I was going to go into engineering. Promptly realized I did not want to do that, and then spent the next few years trying to figure it out. And when I landed on healthcare, realized I really wanted to help and kind of work directly with people. And that was something that took me a while to find. But when I found out kind of that I wanted to go that way, I looked at all the different opportunities. And in my mind, I thought nursing was exciting because it was working with patients. You're doing a lot of kind of procedural things. You're really hands-on. But for me, it was hard to not really have a part in the decision-making process. And then on the flip side, you have the MDs, where they have a lot of decision makings, but they have a lot of responsibility and weight that, everything kind of settles on them, and they can't switch. They can't change that. And a lot of the people I shadowed, they weren't really involved in procedures. They were kind of this, floating brain in a way of just creating ideas, saying stuff that should probably happen, and then moving on. So I like that the PA kind of blended both of those. It was really hands-on, you're really interactive. Every time I talked with anyone and told them I was interested in becoming a PA, they're like, oh, I had the best PA here. I haven't heard a bad PA story. You've heard, the nurse missed my vein 300 times and now my arm's blown up. The doctor ignored everything I said. I have not heard a single, my PA was a jerk. I didn't like them. Why are you doing that? So that just really spoke to me in a broader sense for the entire profession and felt true to who I am.
Not to kind of end my story, was a while back, but from my perspective, it was very similar. I think it's great to have this audience of high school students interested in the profession, but majority of us did not grow up thinking that we were going to be PAs, and it was no different for me. I'm an immigrant to this country, and so when I came to this country at age 14, all I really knew about medicine was a doctor and a nurse, and I really didn't know about all the different facets that existed. And until I really got to college, and I joined, in undergrad, I joined a pre-health society, and I learned about the various professions. So then I learned, there's something called physical therapy, occupational therapy, and all these different aspects. Like I had never heard about that, speech pathology, or any number of other subspecialties within medicine that I had never heard of, because like my two little kids, they watch, Doc McStuffin, and they know doctor and nurse because those roles are pretty clear, and we grew up with those exposures ourselves, going to the provider, and that's what we tend to see. And so I really didn't learn about the PA profession until then. And even when I heard of it, I was like, oh, that sounds nice, but I still want to be pre-med. I didn't see a PA in action. And so I very distinctly remember the summer that I was studying for the MCAT, which is the admissions exams, kind of like test that you have to take before you get into med school. And I was studying for the MCAT while I was volunteering at the hospital, and I was in the emergency room, fast track, in that setting, and it was run by PAs. I never saw a doc, not once. It was entirely run by PAs, and I closed that MCAT book and I said, I don't know why I'm doing this. This is exactly what I want to do. And it wasn't about the title. It was about the ability to work with patients. And I saw what amazing rapport they had. As Bryce stated, they were doing the procedures and they were doing everything that I ever thought I wanted to do. So I immediately stopped studying for the MCAT, started shadowing more PAs, make sure it wasn't a fluke what I had seen, at the emergency room there in that setting. And I got some amazing mentors to help me along the way to learn more about the profession. And there you go, it just all fell into place. But I think it's very natural because it's still a young profession. It's, a little over 50 years old. It's not been around as long as nursing or physician or MD kind of profession. So there are not many of us around. We're growing in number, but we're just not as much around. So people are slowly exploring and learning about it. So I credit to those of you on the call today who are taking the step and learning about this still relatively new profession. So you get a better sense of what that is. But I think all of us would agree on this panel, it didn't make an impact until we saw one in action. And so I think that if you find that opportunity to shadow somebody, even if it's for half a day, take advantage of it. Go and see what a nurse, what a PA, what a PT, look at all the different professions. So you have a good sense of what does their job entail, what do they get to do and not get to do, how much do they enjoy what they're doing, and then you'll get to make a decision for yourself as to what you like.
How did I mute myself and then unmute my? It's fine. You'd think I'd have Zoom figured out by now. All right. So next question. Those were all wonderful answers. But how did y'all prepare to get into PA school? Kind of what do y'all need to do? Do you have to get experiences outside of school? What does a really strong application look like, and what did y'all do to achieve that?
So like I said, in undergrad, I really focused on the academics aspect. So I made sure, I was getting the good grades to be a competitive applicant. I was participating in clubs and running for some positions like secretary or president of clubs, and really taking some leadership positions. And then after graduating, I got my CNA certification. So that's the nurse aide. And through that, I was able to get my PCA, which is the patient care experience certification, and work in a hospital. So you are required to have some patient care hours for when you do apply. So having those and working either as a nurse aide or working in a hospital will make you a strong applicant. And then after that, as a PCA, there's only certain things that you can do. So after maybe a year, a little bit over a year, I felt like I was doing the same things every day, and I wanted to keep learning to be a competitive applicant and have more background. So I decided to apply for a microbiology position since I did have that degree. So I was a microbiologist for another year, and I feel like that correlates with medicine with all the microbiology background. So definitely found something that would kind of set me apart was finding that career.
So my biggest suggestion would be to get into healthcare in any type of way that you can, whether that be shadowing, volunteering, any way to get those direct patient care hours. I personally worked in a pharmacy. I was a pharmacy technician, but I know a lot of fellow classmates, just like you were, PCAs. So whatever you can do to get some healthcare hours, however that might be, is my biggest suggestion.
And the advantage by starting earlier is that you get to have the time to get a variety of hours so that you can interact with people in a very broad environment. And so that allows you to really make sure that you want to deal with people, because people can be awesome, but sick people can also be miserable. So that's the nice thing about PAs, is that you actually figure out before going in that you really enjoy working with people.
I'd have to echo what they said. I think most of the time, the typical path that you have of a PA school applicant is that they have to have a bachelor's degree. So once you finish high school, you do have to get a bachelor's. It does not have to be in the sciences. But it's typically what most candidates tend to do. So they may have a biology, chemistry, something along those lines, but that's not required. You just have to have a bachelor's degree and complete some of the prerequisites. So there are certain courses that you need to have. Now, depending upon which PA school you apply, the prerequisites are different. But most often, there's a common theme: anatomy, physiology, biology, chemistry, things along those lines are some of the required courses that you have to take. So you could definitely be a music major, for instance, and still apply to PA school as long as you get all your prerequisites. And most of the time, what we're looking at is your GPA. So how you're doing your overall GPA, your science GPA, your prerequisite GPA. And then we also look at some of the other things that the other students have mentioned is, what are the extracurricular activities that you have done? You want to make sure that you're not one of those people who pass out when you see blood, for instance. So some of those, getting that experience, not that you can't get over it, but you want to learn that early so you can work towards it. But being able to work, I think Bryce made a very good point. It's talking to people is one thing, dealing with people who are sick is a different thing. And so who are not at their best, or might be this is the worst moment of their life and they're in the hospital. And so how do you interact with them? There's always something to learn at every level, and there's so many different things that you can do to gain those experiences. If they're volunteer or if they're paid, even better. If in whatever form that you can get that experience, and you start early. Because I can't tell you how many times I've had wonderful candidates who want to apply to PA school, but they didn't quite figure out they wanted to do PA till maybe their senior year in undergraduate school. And so now they're scrambling to get it all done before the application deadline. Versus, again, if you're on this call, you're already way ahead. The fact that you have, 4, 5, 6 years to kind of plan and track, that's great. The other big thing is track it. So every hour that you did, every time you volunteered, you volunteered at an event or a health fair, or you worked in a hospital, or you did, got a certification, track those hours, keep those name and numbers of your supervisors so they can be your reference from when you apply to PA school. And that says a lot. Having varied experiences will also help you during the interview process, because most all PA schools will do an interview before you can get in. And the candidate that tends to have a lot of patient care experience or healthcare experience tend to shine just naturally, because they have so much to draw upon when they're having a conversation with the interview panel, and that kind of comes through. Most, again, every PA program is different. So I'm going to focus more so from the Mounts perspective. So we require 500 hours of patient care hours, or direct patient care hours that the candidate has to have before they're accepted in the program. You also need 40 hours of PA shadowing. So again, these are literally how many hours did I spend with somebody, and you're tracking the stuff down and having them sign a form, that you did complete it. So getting that stuff is, and starting early really helps you out. The other piece, again, depending upon the PA program you apply, that you have to do before you get into a physician assistant program, is potentially completing the GRE, which is, again, the standardized test that you would have to take. And higher the score, the better generally. But that is something that is also usually needed before you can apply to PA school.
Thank you. So, and I know y'all talked about a couple of different things. Out of all of the things that y'all did, both academically, outside of school, to prepare for PA school, what do you think is the single most important thing that a student should do to get into PA school, or to help them get into PA school?
I think that's a hard thing to put one thing because I think they all fit together. It's a big jigsaw puzzle. And as someone who sits on the admissions committee, I want to say that we do look at everything. It's not, I could have a candidate with a 4.0 undergraduate degree, but I guarantee you that, and there have been many that I have declined, and I have not given them a seat in the program. Just because they had a 4.0 GPA didn't mean that they were the fantastic candidate and I want them in the program. Because there are other facets of what they have done maybe didn't shine as much. Maybe they were so good at, maybe they're good at test taking, but they're not good with people. And that shines through in the interview or the recommendation letters or something along those lines. I think everything plays a role. But that means you're spread thin. But if you start early, then it's not so much of a burden, because you have time to kind of work on all aspects of your application to make you shine during the interview. I think the GPA matters, the GRE matters. Having healthcare hours and having them varied helps you. Typically, like I said, you can get 500 hours in one setting, and that's great. You meet the requirement. But then maybe you're limited on what you can share when you're having a conversation during interviews. And so you can definitely knock them out, but it may not make you stand out in an interview and reduce your chances of getting in. So I think all those different pieces, put together make you the perfect candidate and make you a better PA. Because even unlike my students, when I applied to PA school, I had very limited patient care experience. I applied the first year and I got waitlisted. I didn't get in. And then I waited a year out and I applied again. But during that year out, I got more varied healthcare experiences. I shadowed more. I worked as an MA. I did more extra things. And then I felt like during the second time around, maybe it was nurse because I'd done it once before. Maybe I was more comfortable. I don't know. But on the other hand, I had so much more to talk about. And I felt like it made me stand out. And then the second year, I got accepted at 6 programs. So I got my pick, which was nice. And so I think that, the only major difference, I didn't take new classes or anything. It was just the experiences that I gained in that 1 year that helped me, I think, stand out. So all of those things I think are important. And most programs look at all of those pieces to make a decision. So I'm sorry, I wish I could say it was just one thing, because the GPA could be great, or you could have someone with a 3.0 GPA, but they have all this amazing leadership skills and they have all this healthcare experience that they draw upon, and they show grit and resilience. And I'd rather have that person versus the 4.0, because the 4.0 only focused on the grades and did nothing else. So it's a little bit of everything counts.
Thank you. And then this is another one of those questions that I would like everyone to answer. Why did y'all choose MSJ? Like, why did you choose the Mounts program?
So there's a couple different reasons for me. One of the biggest, so that this is the only PA program in Cincinnati. I wanted to stay close to home, so that was a big deciding factor for me. Another deciding factor was the fact that MSJ does 12 months of didactic or academic year and then 11 rotations, whereas some other schools do more time with academic and less time on rotations. So I like that you're out in the field more. And there was a third thing that I just lost, so I'll chime in if I remember. Sorry.
Yeah, I agree with Kalia. Probably the main thing for me was staying local. I already, going into it, I imagined that PA school was going to be something so different than undergrad. It was going to be difficult. I needed to focus on my studying, and it wasn't going to be something I've ever experienced before, and I wanted to succeed and do well. So I thought that staying local and not changing up that aspect of life would help me with my PA school. And it really has. It's a lot less stressful when you're in an area that you know compared to an area that you don't know and starting something new. And in my opinion, that was my reason.
So I'm a little bit biased on my response because I did go to MSJ as an undergrad. So going to MSJ as an undergrad and the small classes and the faculty, I knew that that's where I wanted to continue my education. I really did enjoy my time at MSJ. All of my professors and my faculty, definitely you could tell that they were very involved in my success and they went above and beyond. So I actually had one of my undergrad professors who is teaching in the PA program suggested to me for the first time and wrote me a letter of recommendation for the MSJ PA program. And as an MSJ graduate, I had been gone for 2 years when I decided to apply to MSJ's program. And I reached out to a couple of old professors and a couple different departments to get help. And they were so ready to jump on and help me apply to PA school. So I actually had one of my prior professors set up a panel to help me with interviews. So that's just like the kind of above and beyond that you get at MSJ from your faculty and staff. And even in the PA program, you still get that. You still get the professors that will, if you say you are struggling with something, will send you an email with something that they found out that will be helpful for you. So I think that is the biggest thing that makes MSJ stand out is the level of attention that you get from everybody. And you can tell that they definitely want to see you succeed and will go above and beyond for you.
For me, the interview really won me over, fully admitting that MSJ wasn't crazy high on my list when I first applied. But the interview, I came out and like my first call was to my wife and I was like, if I get in here, I'm coming. Like, I just felt so welcome and warm. Like Vanessa was saying, that everyone goes above and beyond. I felt that I wasn't just going to be a student. I wasn't going to just be a number. The small class sizes would allow for me to get the education and the help that I really needed. And then I also really appreciated that it is a newer program. So they are, and even beyond that, that they make the effort of being really responsive to the students. Other programs, you hear kind of horror stories that they've been doing this for the last 30 years and by golly, that's how they're going to do it regardless of what's going on. Whereas MSJ, the professors will ask you repeatedly throughout the semester, what's going on, what's going well, what isn't, how can we change, how can we improve? And so that feedback and adapting and seeing those changes happen was really, really helpful in making my decision.
Thank you. Khalid, did you think of your third thing?
I did. Vanessa and Bryce touched on it. It was the small class sizes. So my undergrad was also a very small school. And then I went to UC to finish some prerequisites after graduating from undergrad. And I remember my anatomy class had like 300 people in it, as opposed to my undergrad, I had like 300 people in my graduating class. So I was like, whoo. So I love small schools. The relationships with the professors is just amazing. Professor Mather, I could call her any time of the day if I needed. Like they're awesome, and they're really there for you, not only for your education, but for you as a person. And I really appreciate that. And I don't know. I love small schools, and I love that relationship with the professors. So everything Vanessa said, yeah.
Thanks. So what transitioning from, undergrad, and I know a few of you obviously took some time between undergrad and PA school, but what did y'all find was the biggest difference between your undergrad and PA school?
I think that the biggest difference is the type of studying that you have to do and the type of recall that you have to do. So in undergrad, you are pretty much provided the information and you could just memorize it and then spit it back out exactly as it was on the presentation or as you were told. Whereas in grad school, the studying is more tailored to you being able to take the information that you're given and going 2 steps further and being able to come up with a solution based on the information that you were given and really think critically. So it does require not just studying, but being able to apply the concepts that you were given in class and be able to do some reasoning on your own. So sometimes you could study 10, 15 hours for an exam and not perform as well as you would have in undergrad, just because the type of testing is different, and you definitely do want to apply the concepts and take it 2 steps further for that.
The biggest thing for me was time management, relearning time management. And everyone's going to tell you this when you're just going into regular undergrad, that you're going to learn time management. And I thought I had mastered it after undergrad. I was on dance team. I did a lot of extracurriculars. I was in a lot of clubs, and I thought I had time management down. PA school is even more time management, but once you get in the flow of things and once you figure out your studying techniques and everything gets a lot smoother. But yeah, my biggest thing was time management. So figure that out as soon as you can, and then it'll be smoother for you.
I agree with what Vanessa and Kayla have said, but it was, for me, the biggest difference was the atmosphere. Undergrad, you're going to take classes where, there might be 50 people, there might be 300 people, might be 10 people, but without a doubt, there's going to be at least 25% of the people in that class are not going to want to be there. They're taking it because they have to. They don't care. They're going to be in their pajamas. They're going to fall asleep as soon as the professor starts lecturing. But to be in a graduate program, like these two people have made that choice to go the step beyond. They have chosen to be there. And so that energy, I'm not saying it's not hard, not saying you don't have to manage your time, but having that kind of supportive environment has been one of the biggest and most helpful things, especially with all of this COVID insanity going on.
I think what they stated is correct. I think the difference between undergrad, and I tell my students as well, when they start that first semester of our school, does feel a little bit like undergrad. And then the summer semester hits and it knocks their socks off because it's a completely different way of learning. As a program director always says, it's like trying to take a sip of water from a fire hydrant, and it really is. It's just a lot of information. It's not necessarily that the information is hard. It's just about you're learning all of medicine in 1 year, and then you're going out and applying it for the next 15 months, and then you graduate and you're responsible for taking care of people and sick people and making life or death decisions. And so that's the big difference. And so there's a lot of added pressure associated with it, because you keep thinking, I keep reading about these scenarios about this 25-year-old female patient, but really that's a person that I'm going to be having to manage. And so that added weight and responsibility is different than anything that you will take in undergrad. But it's also, like I said, it's the volume of information that gets thrown at you. It is a full-time job, more than a full-time job. I think that most of our students will admit that it is all-consuming. They're in class from 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. And then they take a break, they have dinner, and then they study again. I mean, it's a never-ending thing for those 27 months. And once they graduate, they're still going to be learning, but they learn on the job. And this is a profession that you never stop learning. And I think that's something that's wonderful about it. Medicine keeps changing. You change specialties and you have to learn something new. But that's the beauty of it. Once you decided to go on this path of medicine, you're always going to be learning something new, daily, weekly, monthly, whatever it may be. It's just something that you're constantly being challenged and you have to step up. And so I think that's the wonderful thing about it. But PA school definitely is very draining, but it'll make you stronger in the end.
And kind of going off of that, for the classes that you are taking, all of them are important and you have to retain information from all of them, as opposed to an undergrad where you would take some classes that were required as core curriculum or just like fun classes to fill in your credit hours that you could forget about or just go hang out with your friends. This is like the full schedule is full of hardcore classes that are important for your career. Then you're going to have to remember information from every single one of them, which I think that makes it a little bit more difficult than an undergrad where I didn't feel as pressured, even though I was taking the same amount of credit hours.
Thanks. And I think it was Kalia who mentioned it a little bit earlier. She talked about like didactic years and kind of what things look like. And y'all have mentioned about 2 years, 2 to 3 years. So we've touched on a little bit, but how long exactly is PA school and what do the years look like? Like I said, I know we've touched on a little bit, but just again, kind of high level.
Sure. Again, it depends upon the program that you go to. Every PA program has a different schedule. So here at the Mount, our program is 27 months, and typically most programs are about that. If you were to look around the country, there are some that are 24. So basically, it would mean a year of didactic, which when we say that, it just means classroom time, lectures. So you have 1 year of lectures and then 1 year of clinical experience where you go out and do rotations in a particular field. So at the Mount, we have 27 months. So the first year, the first 12 months is in the classroom, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. And then for an entire year. And after that, you go off on clinical rotations for the next 15 months. And so basically every 5 weeks, you get to experience a different subspecialty. Sorry, I should say specialty, not specialty. So you go from emergency medicine, family medicine, internal medicine, pediatrics, women's health, surgery, things along those lines. So you can kind of rotate every 5 weeks. So Bryce and Vanessa are right now in that first year phase where they're in the classroom from 8 to 5, and then Kalia and Kyler are on the clinical phase. And so where they're changing rotations every 5 weeks. So that's the difference. When you are, and I'll let them chime in a little bit, but basically in that didactic year, you are in the classroom learning all the basics of medicines. And learning about disease processes, how to diagnose it, how to treat it, what medication should I pick, what test should I order. When you get into the clinical year, you're the one going in and seeing the patient. So you knock on the door, you go in, you take a history, you do a physical, you figure out what you want to do, you come outside and you tell your preceptor, this is my game plan, this is what I want to do. And you get to apply that knowledge hands-on. And so that's the difference between the two.
Does anyone have anything else they want to add? No? I mean, she covered it pretty well, so, okay.
Elizabeth, we do have a question.
I see that. I'm getting there. So what, Professor Mather, this is more a question aimed for you. What is an acceptable GRE score? What's kind of a good aim to get when applying?
So again, it depends upon the program. So I'll speak specifically for the Mount. So we do not have a minimum GRE score, but typically to be a competitive applicant, it is recommended that you have a combined score of above 300 for your quantitative and verbal. So at least a 150 in each, ideally. And when it comes to the writing score, we'd like to see a 4 or above. So that's what we like to see, but we do not have a specific minimum cutoff. But that's what we tend to look for when we look at the GRE. Statistically, at least our program is young. We've only, this is our, Bryce and Vanessa's class is our 3rd cohort. So we're a new program, but looking statistically, the ones who have higher writing scores tend to do well in the program. And so that's a trend that we have seen. And so that's why we kind of push for that.
Thank you. Also, good question, by the way. So then I just have two kind of more general questions left for everyone on the panel. So the second to last one, the penultimate one, what do you think makes the Mounts Physician Assistant Program unique?
So I'll kind of start off with this, and I think Bryce kind of hinted at it earlier. As a faculty member coming in, I felt like I know what I looked for when I was applying to PA school way back when, and it's no different than I wanted to decide to teach. I think that the fact that we're a smaller university makes a big difference. And one of the best things that I have seen at our program, and I've been there since the beginning, is that we take our student feedback very, very seriously. And we've adapted and changed, partly because we're new and we're learning as well, just as much as them. But on the other hand, we want to know what works and what doesn't work, and we pivot and adjust. And we're a smaller program and we have a smaller cohort size. So we have a lot more one-on-one interaction between faculty and students. We really do know what's going on sometimes on a daily basis, with them. Even though I don't see Kalia and Kyler as often, they happen to be my advisees as well. I don't see them often, but I get an email every week telling me how they're doing on their rotations. And I kind of feel like I'm still there, with them on rotation, and it's great. With my first year students who are in the classroom, I'm seeing them every week, minimum 7 hours I spend with them, most of the time in person, COVID aside. I spend, a lot of time with them. And so whether they're my advisees or not, I have a lot of interaction with them. And I feel like you can sense, like this last week, they were really stressed, right? So all the faculty sensed on it, and everybody started changing things around a little bit to like, we need to give them a break. Like, we have to adjust things around here. They seem really on the edge. And so, because it's the end of the semester, it usually is, and it's the end of their didactic year. So the fact that we can make those changes and we're so in tune to the students, I think is what makes us unique. And just within the first year, I had only taught one semester. Based on the feedback from faculty and students, we made the change. The following semester, things were all changed around and the students loved it. So I think that's something you do not get at other universities from personal experience of being a student, but just hearing from other PA educators as well. So I think that would be my statement.
One of the things that was different for me and that I appreciated, and I don't know if other schools do this as much, but was the community involvement aspect that you get involved with during the classroom year. That was something that drew me to the MSJ, and just being able to get out there and practice with, some mock patients, pretending, interviewing some senior citizens at local nursing homes, and getting involved with some community service projects during the year. That got a little messed up this year, but just knowing that that is a part of the kind of core of the program, and intertwining and making that a part of your eventual practice was really important to me, and I thought it was a really unique aspect of the program.
So everything I was going to say has kind of been touched on already, but as Bryce was saying, the vision and mission is set on service, and that was something that's really important to me. It's always been a passion of mine to advocate for diversity and looking at healthcare disparities and all those kinds of things. So the fact that service and volunteering and everything like that was such a big factor was also important to me. And then, as I said earlier, more time on clinical rotations versus in academic lectures was a big deciding factor for me as well. Or we're not on deciding factors, but what makes MSJ unique, because from my experience, that's where you really learn the information. In didactic year, you feel like you're learning everything, but then you see it and you see the patient, and it clicks. It's like a light bulb. You're like, oh, I actually understand all of this disease pathology now. So that was another big thing for me. Yeah, and then the small class size, like I mentioned earlier.
I would agree with everything that was said. I think that definitely what Professor Mather said, our faculty themselves that work directly with us, you can tell that they work hard. And every time we go to class, you know, they have something prepared and they have a reason for doing it, and they change up their lessons. Sometimes they make us practice, they give us cases to practice, they give us flashcards to study the different conditions. So they definitely, you can tell the work that they put into their lectures so we can retain the information and have variety. But not just that, I think that the whole Mount community is that way. Like Leah said, we have the mission of service to others. And I have recently decided to work on a grant, and I reached out to the director of civic engagement, and he was so encouraging and helpful, and he provided me with so many resources. And it was within hours that I emailed him. So definitely getting involved with different campus officials to help you with anything that you may need. We do have a wellness center that is also very supportive. So, and then the financial aid office. So with COVID and everything going on, you know, I've had to contact them concerning some finances, and they've definitely been more than willing to work with me and have walked me through each step by step. And I've even had them call me and follow up with me and see how I'm doing. So I think that the whole Mount community itself is very supportive. And that's what I appreciate about the Mount.
Another neat thing, Professor Mather, I don't know if other schools have this, but the anatomage lab, do other schools? I don't know, but so it's basically like this huge iPad where a cadaver, if you don't know, a cadaver is a dead body that people used to study. A cadaver is downloaded onto this big iPad looking thing. It's like 6 feet, and you can cut and replace where you taken out. So it's really cool. So it's like you're working with a cadaver, but you can make mistakes and then hit undo. And it's very cool. I really liked it. And then they also do have real cadavers as well. So that was another neat thing that I really enjoyed.
All right. So I'm gonna ask one last question here. And just again, just everyone kind of chime in. What surprised y'all about PA school? Kind of what was you're like, hey, I know some of you kind of mentioned like Professor Mather, I know you mentioned about like water from a fire hose. So I'm sure that's probably was some of it, but getting into it, kind of what was the thing that you're just like, oh wow, was not expecting this?
I think that they always tell you that PA school is hard, and you hear it from your friends, and you hear it from your family, and you hear it from the professors, and you hear it from students that are in the program, but you don't really realize how hard it is until you're in it. Like somebody can tell you multiple times, and until you're in it, you're like, oh wow, this is really actually hard. It goes by super fast. You are getting a lot of information, and it was a big step. So when I went from high school to college, it was like they reteach you some of the stuff in high school, and then they add like a little bit more, and you're like, oh, okay, that's neat to know. But for grad school, going from undergrad to grad school, it's like you're expected to know everything that you learned in undergrad, and then they teach you everything else. So you kind of don't have time to catch up if you aren't already caught up. I was a neuroscience major as an undergrad student, and I think I told Professor Mather this during one of our advising sessions, and she thought it was funny, but I learned more about neuroscience in 1 week of PA school than I did my whole 4 years of undergrad. And so that really brought into perspective just how much information we're getting, how fast, and how much of a step up it really is from undergrad. And then in our principles of medicine class, you really do get 1 week to learn a whole system. So GI, usually the bigger systems you get maybe 2 weeks, but it really does move that fast.
Just to chime in on that, so like she was saying, everyone will tell you that it's hard, just like I'm sure people have warned you that undergrad will be harder than high school. But I think, how do I word this correctly? So the population that's applying for PA school, right? typically pretty smart people. They pretty much like they have their studying techniques down. So it's easy to be like, oh, well, not me, you know, like I know, like I'm so smart. So just listen to people. If you do, it is difficult, but it is very doable. I think the thing that surprised me the most was how quickly it went by. Like just the other day, I was talking to someone and they were like, oh, well, when are you supposed to graduate? I'm supposed to graduate in May. And I was like, oh my goodness, how did that happen? And then you look back and it's just like so much that you've learned. And I look back to who I was, you know, a year and a half or 2 years ago. And I was just like, wow, I didn't know any medicine then. And I know so much now. Like it's a really cool feeling and it goes by really, really fast. So I think that's the thing that surprised me the most.
I've been out of PA school for a while, but what I would say is what I learned in PA school has stayed with me 12 plus years out of my career. And I think those are some of it's the most fun I have ever had in school. And I don't think it's just the camaraderie, the friendships that I've made have lasted a lifetime. And I think that, again, as I was telling some of my students recently, I haven't worked in an emergency room setting since I graduated. But what I learned then is things and principles I can still apply today if I were to see an emergency, or for some reason, if I was thrown in the ER and I had to work, I'd still be able to take care of my patients because of what I learned 12 plus years ago. And that's some of the things that what you learn now stays with you your entire career, no matter what specialty you go into. And that's really cool. Who can say that? I mean, I think that most everything else, if you don't use it, you kind of lose it kind of perspective, but that doesn't happen in medicine. It just stays with you and you lose those principles again and again and you see it. And the important stuff will just stick with you.
Kyler and Bryce, what about you?
For me, there's kind of two, and they both were kind of hit on. Clea and Vanessa already kind of mentioned it with the change in studying habits. Like studying's always been easy for me. School's always been gone really smoothly. So I knew that it was going to be a lot of information, a lot of studying hours, but I didn't expect to have to totally drastically shift my entire study foundation. It wasn't just, oh, I have to memorize these facts, but I have 30 instead of 10 a night. I now have to figure out why this is connected to that, even though they were taught in two separate classes and no one mentioned that they were connected. So that was different. That was a surprise. And then just the depth of the relationships that we've made with the other people in my cohort. We, in a way, were robbed, much like you guys were probably robbed in your first year, freshman, junior, whatever. Just that with COVID, we stopped meeting in person in March. So we only had 6-7 weeks to meet. Whereas, but even still, we are incredibly tight. I know that there are a lot of people that I could call in a drop of a hat, even though we don't meet in person all that often outside of class because of COVID. But it's the camaraderie and the friendships are astounding.
Yeah, Bryce pretty much said just what I was going to say. It's, you go in all stressed out and nervous for school, but that quick, you're able to make such great relationships with your, the students that are in your class, because everybody, or mostly everybody, has the exact same, I guess, interests as you and motivation as you, and, you go through it with them. So it's really easy to build relationships that ultimately help you get through this very stressful and hard time in your life.
Thanks, y'all. So we're gonna hang out for just like another minute. I know we're slightly over time. So if y'all have to go, I apologize. We're gonna hang out here for just a minute. So if y'all have any questions, you can just put them in the chat and we'll get them answered. If no one has any questions.
I just wanted to share this one last thing, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
I think I just kind of wanted, as we're wrapping up the session, I wouldn't be here today if I didn't have mentors along the way. And so that's something that I really, and look, I'm getting a lot of nods. I really hope the fact that those who are, attending the session today, you're already way ahead. As a high school student, the fact that you're interested in a health profession, specifically PA school, that's awesome. find someone to guide you through that process. There's lots of pitfalls along the way, and all of us have probably made mistakes, but then we finally got here. You will make mistakes, but if there's someone who can guide you of how to pivot and change and improve and move forward, that's really helpful. As I said, I was an immigrant to this country. I didn't understand the schooling system at all. My parents couldn't help me through this. They did not know anything about the education system here. And I had to learn, and I made a lot of mistakes along the way. In undergrad, I took the wrong classes. I didn't focus. I didn't realize the importance of that freshman year GPA to pad all the upper level classes I'm going to have later. Some of those things I learned the hard way. So if you find a mentor, you have an advisor, you have someone, whether it's a PA or anybody else who can guide you through that process, please take advantage of them. There's plenty of people out there. If you ask for help, they're happy to provide it. If you think you can do it alone, you may definitely can, but you may make more mistakes than were needed. And it may take you longer to get to that dream job that you were hoping for. So please find a mentor. I had a mentor through high school, undergrad, and then when I wanted to become a PA, I had a mentor then too. And then I wanted to go into education, and then I had a mentor too. And so I've always relied on a mentor to help me through. And I hope I am the same, and I've helped, future, interested PAs along the way. There's plenty out there. So just ask and get that guidance. So you don't make quote unquote silly mistakes that can cost you a lot sometimes, a whole semester for you to get into PA school, for instance, because that happened to me. I didn't realize I needed a nutrition class, and then I had to wait a whole other cycle. So there are certain things that if you learn early, it just helps you along the way, and it's free help. So please find a mentor.
Good advice. I need to find a mentor. I don't see any questions coming in, so I will let everyone go. Thank you all so much for being on this panel and for answering all these questions. And if y'all have any questions listening, please feel free to reach out to us in the Office of Admission, and we can get you connected to PA if necessary.